what do you want to get out of this?
Well, we want to get out where YR came from so that on YR Day we can celebrate not only our past, but our present and our future as well. And you just carry so much of the history of YR and the meaning and the vision for what it was intended to be, and hopefully what it is now 34 years later.
Isn't that thrilling that it's still going? I'm so proud of you all.
No, we're thankful for you because we wouldn't be here without you. So that's really what we want to talk about today.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess if we're welcoming our viewing audience who will be viewing this on Saturday on YR Day, I'm Laura Ferguson. I'm the Executive Director at Youth Resources. I stand on the shoulders of giants, one of them being
You're doing a very good job yourself.
So Phyllis Kincaid is here with us today, and we just want to talk about where YR came from and what the vision was in 1987 and how that has transformed into where we are today. And to do that interview is our current TAC president and Teen Power Youth staff member and Teen Court volunteer and Make a Difference grant volunteer, Rebecca Samuel. And Beck, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, I first got involved with YR, my first middle school Teen Power in 7th grade, have been going ever since. Applied for youth staff a few years ago. I joined TAC because my brother was involved. He used to wake me up really early every morning, and I just fell in love with it. I've been volunteering with Teen Court since my freshman year. Learned a little bit about MAD grants this year and then joined in a little bit on that. But yeah, I love everything that YR is and does, the people more than anything. So yeah, that's me.
That's her.
Wonderful.
Okay, Phyllis, I'm going to turn my video and sound off, and so that you and Becca can just talk with each other.
Okay.
So we'll just get started with a little bit of history about YR. If you want to tell us how YR got started.
Well, Jack Calhoun, who was the executive director of the National Crime Prevention Council, submitted a grant to Lilly Endowment to try a program in 3 Indiana sites, Evansville, Fort Wayne, and Indianapolis. And this program was to get young people involved in community service. But the difference about this program was that the young people were to identify the problem and they were to craft the final product. Now, if they were working with a teacher or youth serving agency, they could kind of guide them, but they were to really listen to the young people. And so then with this grant, there were 3 directors that were hired. I was so fortunate to get the job in Evansville. And the first thing I realized about my job was that I had an absolutely outstanding board. They had put together the people that got the original grant they were in the mayor's lap. They were in the lap of Lee Cooper, who was president of one of the leading banks, and we had all kinds of people that served on the board. We had a lawyer that immediately offered pro bono services and is still doing that today, and that's Reed Schmidt. So I wish I could name everybody that helped us get started, but we had a wonderful beginning. And at one of the early board meetings, a member, I believe this was Jan Davies, who was the director of the Girl Scouts, said something about, well, we need to get the teenagers involved in this in another way. So the next thing I knew, one of the other board members said, well, we need to have a meeting with some high school kids. And he said, the best time to do that is about 6:00 a.m. in the morning because they're so busy otherwise. So we began to meet at 6:00 in the morning, and that meant the rest of us had to get up at 4:30. But it was a good time for us to meet. And that really took off. And we decided that if this was going to be youth directed, that the Teen Advisory Council should be the group that would screen the proposals that came into us. And so that's how that got launched. But in the meantime, we had to make the case to teachers and youth serving agency workers and parents and everything, which we were doing. We were doing a lot of marketing in those days, and I didn't have to raise a single penny for the first 3 years. So, you know, we had money to do things with. So we got started, and I think we had 17 projects that first year. Now, I could be wrong on that number, but they were all youth directed. The teachers just were great to do that, and so were the youth serving agencies. And I was just remembering a story of one of the first projects I went to review was in a kindergarten, and they had put together a little book. And the little boy that was sitting there next to me looked up to me and he said, "Our project's the best." So there was a lot of pride in their projects and what they did. So that was the beginning. And so unlike the other two sites, they did not start a teen advisory council, and so they didn't have that youth voice involved in the decision making. But we were very happy that we had, and that is the beginning. And we had a pretty large board, and the board was just couldn't have been better. That's kind of a long answer to your question.
Oh, it was great. It was great. What was it about the YR mission that attracted you to a program like it?
Well, the first thing is I've always loved children and have always felt that we needed to do our best by children. And I had taught school before I was married, and after I was married, I started having my own children. Well, as soon as they all got into school, I wanted to do something more to help. And so I began to take little jobs, and I helped with the Methodist Youth Home for a while, and then I was the development director for the museum for only 3 months because one of the board members asked me to lunch and told me about this program that was coming to Evansville. And I just had my heart thumping. I was so excited about it. And I just was so hoping I'd get the job, and I did. And that's how it took off. And we went from there. And we had a lot of training from the national youth, the national entity that got the original grant. That was Jack Calhoun. I got to go to Washington, D.C. to be trained, and Indianapolis with Lilly Endowment and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So how did you feel when you got that call that you were going to be the director of the Evansville chapter?
Scared. I'd never done anything like this. And I really wanted to do it. And I was really excited about the purpose. But I thought, golly, can I do this? And so I just kind of jumped into the water and began to swim.
What were some of the biggest challenges in those first years when it was really, really scary?
Well, I think one of the challenges that we ended up doing well was defining our purpose to people, our mission, our goals, and our outcomes. And then another was the importance of putting the young people up front, because they were really doing the work and they were really having a say-so. Also, and this was I don't know if this will come up again in your questioning, but some of the other things we did to bring people together, we started the Evansville Youth Coalition, and that got the school teachers, the youth serving agency people, the youth workers, and anybody that was involved in anything, psychiatrists, psychologists, together once a month for lunch. And we would have a little program, and I could see people at tables beginning to network. I mean, you know, they were saying, "We've got this problem. What are you guys doing?" So, and we felt kind of like a family. We were all working together, not pulling against one another.
So you mentioned one of the challenges was defining that purpose and mission. What did you sort of land on? What was the mission and purpose of YR?
Of YAR, well,
Yeah.
it was to get society to listen to the youth voice and to have them involved in decisions.
I love that. So what were some of the biggest wins that kept you energized? I know you mentioned working with other organizations like the Youth Coalition and all of that. What were some of the other things that kind of kept you going in those first years?
Oh, the Teen Advisory Council. We had such fun and we did so much stuff. We had a lot of leadership training type things when we'd have we always had a little retreat. This was before we started Teen Power. But that was one of the things that caused us to come up with Teen Power. And actually, I got the idea for that. That was not my idea originally. I went to a workshop in Washington, D.C. with the National Crime Prevention Council. And I met a girl there who said to me, as we were sitting together, she said, well, she said, we're already doing a really great program. And I said, what is it? And she described the Teen Advisory Council to me. And I thought, bingo, what's to keep our Teen Advisory Council from doing that? So when I came home, I talked to the board, and they were such a good board. They really let me go and try things. So anyway, I got some of the kids together and explained what it was going to be. And then I got permission of the board. And then I went to Indianapolis because they were doing a program like the summer camps. And we did the right thing because we asked them if they would come down to Evansville and help us start one. And they said they couldn't do it at the time. Well, we had a man on the board on the committee that was looking into that. He said, if you'll do it, he said, I've got $10,000 for you. I said, wow, we'll do it. So the Teen Advisory Council picked the name for the camp. They picked they just did all these interesting things that we could implement when our first campers came. And the University of Evansville gave us free board and room, and it was launched. And the thing I've always thought about that teen advisor, about the camp, the Teen Power Camp, was that there were so many adults that offered to help us, and we had police officers that would not take their vacation so they could come and help us at the camp. And we had brought in really good speakers, and then the kids met. As you've probably been to camp, haven't you? Well,
Yes.
so you know how it works.
We talked about how the Evansville chapter was the only one with a teen advisory council. Was there anything else in our Evansville chapter that made the difference for youth resources still being around today, while the other two locations don't still run like ours does?
Right. The other two sites stayed just with strictly the youth as resources model. But we decided in Evansville that there were plenty of opportunities for us to expand the program and, keep that as our core, but then keep adding things that we saw were needed in our community. And, every community is different. So that was the rationale that our board had about youth resources. And so that's why we added the Teen Advisory Council. And then we added the camp, and somewhere, I don't remember exactly in there, we decided that the teens should be the ones to select the grants that got money. And so, and then we also had some other programs that we were looking at that were later implemented.
Yeah.
But not by me, but not while I was there.
So when you were first named director, what was your vision for youth resources in the future? What did you imagine when you were given this job?
Well, I've already told you I was scared to death. So I I did a lot of praying in those days that I would get the right direction going. But I just mainly thought about what was going on in the community and what needed to be addressed, and that how could we address that. So I think that was what really motivated, and of course the fact that I was just really enjoying the kids so much and so respectful of how the little kids were so cute and so proud, and then the teenagers were so tough. I mean, I mean, tough in the way that they were intellectually into this and coming up with ideas, and so that's why we went to workshops that we had in the summer, little ones, just for our group.
Did you think that YR, while you were still executive director, did you think YR would still be around 30 years later and still changing so many lives?
No, I never thought about that. I just thought that, well, then when I had started to have to raise all this money, see, after 3 years, Lilly Endowment kind of began to back off. They wanted us to prove ourselves to the community. And we had the mayor behind us, and we had a lot of community leaders behind us. And, but I didn't like to raise money. Didn't even like to ask somebody to buy a ticket to go to a play. So this was quite an adjustment for me. And fortunately, I believed in the program enough that I could go in and I could sell it. But when I worked for the museum, I'd gone to a workshop on how to approach people and how to pick out people that you thought would be agreeable to what you were wanting money for. And that, of course, was very helpful to me. And then I had so many bigwigs like Lee Cooper, I could drop their name, and that got me through the door to ask for money. Now we didn't, and I eventually had to raise $400,000 a year. And every October I would start saying to my husband, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it. I know we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it. And he said, now just calm down. Just keep hanging in there. And every year we would just make it. Not much over, but we would make it. So I kind of felt like I had some divine help there. I think I found out that there were things I could do that I never dreamed I could, because I was a music teacher. And I had not had the experiences of that I was getting in this endeavor. But the lesson that I learned from that is, and I would say this if I were coming to the Teen Advisory Council, don't be surprised with what you're able to do. If you get a mission you really believe in and it's going to be beneficial, you can just do things you wouldn't have dreamed you could.
I love that a lot. What do you think makes a successful servant leader?
A successful servant leader, now I think determination is one of the things, and I think tact is one of the things, and I think a sense of humor will get you very far. And I think that if you can sell the idea that, hey, we may still be teenagers, but by golly, we can make a difference. I think that those are some of the motivations.
So just believing in something and
believing in something, believing in yourself, and believing in possibilities.
What do you think is the most important thing adults can do to help kids be their best once they have that idea and believe in themselves?
I think adults need to live their mission, what they believe in. They need to set a good example, and they need to, whatever that may be, not veer from that if possible. Now, some kids are going to have situations where they don't have adults that can do that. They have problems. Maybe they're an alcoholic or something. And I think from that standpoint, then I'd like to see a way for kids that are in situations like that to get counseling, get somebody on their side to help them through that. And being part of a group like Youth Resources would be a big help.
Absolutely. Why is it so important for young people to get involved in our community through volunteering and civic engagement opportunities?
Well, it's important for a lot of reasons. One, it's going to help those of you that do it to be finer people and more. You're not just always thinking of yourself. You're thinking of what's out there. How can I help? How can I make this a better world? How can I help my friend who's going through a terrible time? And when you do that, and this is what's the beauty of community service. When you do a community service, it does something for you. You just get all warm and happy inside. And just don't always go with the crowd. Have the guts and the determination and the intellect to stay with what you believe in and what you know is right. You have to be tough.
Are you proud of YR today?
Oh, I'm so proud. I can't stand it. I really am. And I think that we've helped an awful lot of kids. The kids have done it. And we need to continue to listen to young people and continue to let them identify the problems because believe me, they know what's going on.
You said earlier the purpose of YR was so that we would start listening to kids' voices. Why is that so important to hear the voice of youth in our community?
Well, it's like I said before, you guys know what's going on. You know what problems are in the schools or in the neighborhoods. And you can fashion your proposal around a real issue. I mean, this is real stuff. This isn't make-believe.
So we're just gonna kind of wrap up with thinking back on some fun memories that you had with YR. So if you could, was there an impact moment or a moment that you had with a student where you heard their story that reminded me of your why you do YR, like why you choose to do this work and why you spend so much time investing in the youth in our community?
I would say there was not just one moment. There were a whole bunch of moments for me. And as much as I didn't like getting up at 4:30 in the morning, a lot of them happened at those 6 o'clock meetings. 6 o'clock a.m. meetings. And then we'd also have retreats where we do special things like learning how to be a leader of a committee and learning how to be a listener of a committee and learning how to be the timekeeper, that kind of thing, so that when they got into college, they had those basic skills. In fact, I had one fella tell me that he said I was just way ahead of everybody else just because I had learned that lesson, that particular lesson. So the whole experience was just wonderful for me, and I just loved the kids and still do. I mean, I'm still getting to interact somewhat with some of the gals and guys that were in the first Teen Power Camp. They couldn't believe that we were able to do that, down here in southern Indiana.
Yeah. This is probably a tough question, but do you have a favorite memory from your time at YR, or just one that sticks out? Maybe not a complete favorite.
A complete favorite. I don't. I can't have one thing. I mean, I remember Tamara Skinner when she was the president of the Teen Advisory Council, and we had the summer camp at the University of Evansville, and she gave a wonderful talk. I remember how proud I was of her, and how there are just so many little moments. I mean, what we did in our little groups when we would meet after a major speaker and then talk about the speaker. And I'll tell you one that I do have. Not too long ago, I ran into a gal that had been at our Teen Advisor Council and had come to Teen Power Camp. And she had been kind of down in the dumps one day, and I just sat down on the steps and we just talked. And I don't remember what we talked about, but she said, "Phyllis, I'm so glad to see you. My mother loves you to pieces. She says you just saved me." And so I don't know what I said. I'm sure she had a good mother if she was on top of things, but that stuck with me because we do work hard, and it's nice to get someone to say thank you, when you are finished with many years past the time that they actually were involved with youth resources. So I think many of the teenagers that started the camps and were in community service projects have gone on as adults and are continuing to do service projects and continuing to rear their children to do projects. And I think that's a great legacy. We should all feel really proud of that. This is a worthwhile organization.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was so fun for me to hear about the beginnings of YR. I've only been involved for a little over 5 years now, but it's cool to hear. Just thinking back, it's so much more than what I've been able to see, and I love knowing all of that. It reminds me a little bit of like why I continue to do all of this. Just hearing about why and how it began. So thank you.